You've opened this video because you're looking for incredible archaeological finds. You've come to the right place. We know where all the best finds are hiding, and we love nothing better than digging them out, telling you their stories, and sharing the outstanding achievements of our ancient ancestors with everybody. This collection comes from all over the world and from every fascinating period of history. Our first discovery is a very recent one. In October 2021, archaeologists in Ukraine found these beautiful glass pendants close to the town of Kotelva in Poltava Oblast. The team responsible for the discovery was working its way through a Scythian-era burial ground on the side of Barvinkova Mountain when it came across the three stunning artifacts, which were probably made around 2,400 years ago. Nothing like them has ever been found in Ukraine before. Having nothing to compare them to means we can't really say what they were used for. It's likely that they're intended to be decorative objects, but the shape is unusual, and the significance, if there's any significance at all, is unknown. The objects have been taken to the National Academy of Sciences of Ukraine for further study, so perhaps there will be more information available soon. Failing that, the pendants will go to the Museum of the Bilski Historical and Cultural Reserve for exhibition once the experts are done looking at them. If the experts can't come up with any answers, perhaps the public will. From the moment that humans discovered you could make wine by crushing grapes, they've been imbibing it by the gallon. Wine drinking goes back thousands of years, but the vessels that people drink wine out of used to be a lot more decorative than they are now. The perfect example is Nestors Cup. This gorgeous ceramic vessel was found in the town of Laco Amino on the volcanic island of Ischia close to Italy in 1954. Based on the evidence, archaeologists believe it was made on the island of Rhodes about 2,800 years ago. The three-line inscription on the side of the cup is among the oldest surviving examples of the original written Greek alphabet. It reads, "I am the cup of Nestor, good for drinking. Whoever drinks from this cup will instantly be filled with desire for the beautifully crowned Aphrodite." Confusingly, the inscription seems to have been added to the cup hundreds of years after it was made. It appears to be a claim that the cup is the very same one referred to in the ancient Greek epic poem known as the Iliad. That might be true, but it could never be proven. The world's oldest surviving pair of skis were reunited in October 2021 when scientists discovered a single ski buried beneath the ice in Norway and realized it was a match for another single ski they'd found 7 years earlier. In both cases, the skis were found in an excellent state of preservation. The ice had done such an excellent job of looking after them that their birch bindings are still intact, and the leather straps are still attached. Experts think that the skis would have belonged to a pre-Viking-era hunter, who used them to traverse the ice and snow around 1,300 years ago. They would have proved invaluable in crossing mountain trails, which makes it a little odd that they appear to have been abandoned. It's possible the hunter might have found himself caught in an avalanche and forced to leave them behind in order to break free. The second ski was found only 30 feet away from the first on Mount Diggervarden, but the ice was so thick that it was impossible to see it at the time the first was discovered. Only 3 other skis of this design have ever been found before, all of which were found in Finland during the 1990s. The level of artistry on display at the Neolithic site of Karahantepe in Turkey is incredible. It's just a shame that more people don't know it exists. This is probably the oldest three-dimensional sculpture site in the world, with large, crude depictions of animals and human faces jutting out of the ground at jaunty angles. All of the ancient works of art here were created using nothing more advanced than stone tools, and the work was carried out around 11,500 years ago. Part of the reason that Karahantepe is overlooked by tourists is that the world-famous site of Göbekli Tepe is nearby. But if you have an interest in ancient history, there's no reason not to visit both places while you're there. There might even be a connection between the two sites. The T-shaped obelisks can be found at Karahantepe also exist at Göbekli Tepe. Some scientists even think that Karahan Tepe might be older than Göbekli Tepe, but that hasn't yet been conclusively proven. The most confusing sculpture at the site shows a human figure apparently carrying a leopard on its back. Perhaps we had a very different relationship with leopards all that time ago. In July 2021, Matti Rintama of Panilia, Finland, bought his first ever metal detector and took it into his back garden for a test run. He found nothing there, so he went to visit his parents' house and scanned their back garden too. This time, he got a positive result. After a little digging, and to the immense surprise of his parents, he found a Bronze Age sword shattered into 7 pieces. The find is especially remarkable because fewer than 30 Bronze Age weapons have ever been found in the country. The discovery has been verified by Finland's National Board of Antiquities, who place it at around 3,000 years old. Amazingly, the sword was found just 6 inches beneath the surface of the lawn. Professional archaeologists suspect that it might have been moved there accidentally in a pile of topsoil when the lawn was first laid. Panilia is only a small village now, but thousands of years ago it was densely populated, as evidenced by the numerous ancient burial grounds in the area. It's thought that most of the ancient residents left after a prolonged drought during the Iron Age. How did you clean yourself if you got dirty 2,300 years ago? A shower wasn't an option, and nor was a bath in most cases. You couldn't even go for a swim if there wasn't a lake or river nearby. The answer was that you used a strigil, a tool of the kind that went on display at Turkey's Izmir Archaeological Museum in July 2021. A collection of these tools, which were usually made of bronze, was found during excavations in the ancient Greek city of Chios. It wasn't just the Greeks who used strigils, though. The tools were also used by the ancient Romans. We have no way of knowing whether the average person would have owned such a tool, but we do know that they were used by warriors and gladiators to clean themselves after exercise. They'd coat themselves with olive oil before practicing sports, and then use a strigil to scrape away sand, mud, and sometimes blood afterwards. The name strigil means cleaning spoon, which gives you a fair idea of how the tools worked. It wouldn't be totally effective as a means of getting clean, but it would get the worst of the dirt off. John Dee was a strange and remarkable man. He was a political advisor to Queen Elizabeth I of England in the 16th century, but he was also a man with a keen interest in the occult. He even had a so-called magic mirror, which he claimed to have used to speak with angels. The mirror probably didn't have supernatural properties, but it does have a mysterious history. It was re-examined by experts in October 2021, and it's now thought to be a 500-year-old Aztec relic. The mirror has been in the British Museum's Enlightenment Gallery since the 19th century, but hadn't been professionally examined for a long time. A new test that involved the use of an X-ray fluorescent scanner has proven that the obsidian in Dee's mirror came from Pachuca in central Mexico. Back in the 16th century, that part of Mexico was ruled by the Aztecs. They also had a tradition of making obsidian mirrors and attributing magical properties to them. This is probably what drew Dee's attention to it in the first place. Rather than going to Mexico to acquire it himself, though, he probably bought it from a Spaniard who brought it back to Europe after the capture of Tenochtitlan in 1521. One thing that every human being on the planet has in common is that they need to use the toilet. That doesn't necessarily mean that they have access to a toilet, though. Not everyone has a toilet today, but things are better than they were 2,700 years ago. Back then, having a sit-down toilet was a luxury enjoyed only by the rich. Here's one such 2,700-year-old luxury toilet that was found during the excavation of an ancient mansion in Jerusalem in early October 2021. Only a handful of private bathrooms of this age have ever been found in Jerusalem before. The toilet block is made out of limestone and comes with a carefully carved seat and a hole in the middle for obvious reasons. It even had a septic tank beneath it. 40 ceramic bowls were found arranged around the toilet in a circular formation. It's likely that they would have held incense or perfumes and would have been the equivalent of air fresheners. It hasn't yet been possible to prove who the mansion belonged to, but it's likely that it was one of the various kings of the Judean kingdom. Between 1192 and 1867, Japan was governed by a military dictatorship called the shogunate. Recently, archaeologists in the country have been digging up the former residence of the Ashikaga shogunate family in Kyoto. In the garden, they found 8 enormous hand-carved stones, weighing 10 tons each and measuring 9 feet in length. The stones must have served a purpose, but archaeologists have no idea what the purpose might have been, other than a symbolic display of the family's power. They're arranged in a circle around what might have been a pond, and were probably placed there during the reign of Ashikaga Yoshimasa between 1436 and 1490. He isn't generally held in high regard by historians, having triggered the Onin War in 1467 and effectively started the Warring States period, which tore Japan apart. Some historical sources suggest that he wasn't even popular during the time of his reign, so the stones might have been a warning that his power wasn't to be tested. The stones are undecorated, which is unusual, but the mere act of creating them and having them dragged into position would have been difficult. In 2002, archaeologists in Wales excavated the site of a Roman lead smelting hearth in Ceredigion. They were hoping, as you'd expect, to find Roman-era artifacts. What they came away with was something far older. They discovered the artifact now known as the Bank Tyndall sun disk. This tiny gold ornament, which is thought to have been part of a funerary garment, is more than 4,000 years old. That makes it the oldest gold artifact ever to be found in Wales. We now know that the site had been used for lead and copper mining long before the Romans set up their operations there. That still doesn't explain where the gold object came from. Even the idea that it's a funerary object is controversial, as there's no sign there was ever a burial at the site. It's made of very pure gold, with gold content in excess of 94%. Concentric lines and dot circles decorate its perimeter, with 2 holes in the middle so it can be attached to clothing. Similar items have been found in Brittany, France, and are thought to be connected with the early Beaker people. Some inventions are so old and mysterious that we have no way of knowing who first came up with them. The Armillary sphere is a good example of that. We think that it may have been invented by the Greek philosopher Anaximander of Miletus 2,500 years ago, but it's possible the Armillary sphere he made was based on an earlier design. Whoever the inventor was, their creation is an ancient kind of star map and was intended to be a navigational tool as well as a way of monitoring the heavens. Different versions of the sphere have slightly different designs, but the basic shape is always the same. It's a globe at the center, surrounded by numerous rings that show the movements of the moon, sun, stars, and planets through the sky. If you know how to use the sphere, it will tell you where certain celestial objects will appear at specific times of the year. This information would have been useful to sailors, but perhaps less so for astronomers hoping to unlock the secrets of the universe. Like every star chart of its era, it places Earth at the center of all creation. Archaeological discoveries don't come much more controversial than the so-called Los Lunas Decalogue stone. If we take the story of the stone at face value, it was discovered in Mexico in 1933. The most problematic thing about the stone is that it's covered in inscriptions, and the inscriptions appear to be written in a very early version of the Paleo-Hebrew alphabet. When translated, they tell the story of a Greek Cypriot called Zakinaros, who got lost in the Mexican desert after arriving from overseas many centuries before Columbus or the Vikings arrived in the Americas. There's an alternative version of the translation, though. According to Robert Pfeiffer, who was a Harvard-educated historian, the text is an alternative version of the 10 Commandments of the Old Testament. The discovery of the stone is credited to Frank Hibben, but even he said at the time he got it from a tour guide who claimed to have found it as a child in the desert 50 years earlier. The provenance of the stone is contentious at best, so many historians prefer to write it off as a hoax than to consider whether it challenges the narrative of Europeans arriving in America. Subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications, and you will be the first to know when a new video comes out. Thank you for watching, and see you soon.